I want to begin today by acknowledging the challenges we all face in life. We often find ourselves caught in situations that seem impossible, uncertain, and beyond our control. Maybe you're here today feeling like there's no way forward. Perhaps you're facing financial struggles, battling health issues, dealing with a broken relationship, or standing at the crossroads of a life decision, unsure of which path to take. In those moments, it can feel as though the walls are closing in and we wonder where God is in all of this. Is He aware of our struggles? Does He really know what we need? Is He making a way for us even now when everything seems so bleak? Let me tell you something today that I want you to carry with you in your heart. God is making a way for you right now. It doesn't matter what you're going through. God is working in ways you may not even see. And I'm not just talking about some distant future. I'm talking about right now. God is actively at work in your life. He is at work in your present moment, even when you can't see the end of the road. I remember when I was in a season of my life when things seemed hopeless. It wasn't a sudden crisis, but rather a prolonged period of waiting, of wondering, of questioning. I was at a place where it felt like the doors were closing, and I wasn't sure which direction to go. Maybe you've been there too. Those moments when you feel trapped between your circumstances and God's promises, trying to figure out how He's going to show up. I remember the frustration of not knowing when the breakthrough would come, or even what that breakthrough would look like. But over time, I began to realize something I want you to know today. God was at work, even when I didn't understand it. He was preparing a way for me long before I even recognized it. In Isaiah 43:19, God says, "Behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it?" You see, God is doing a new thing in your life as well. Right now, in the midst of your trial, in the midst of your waiting, God is at work in ways that you can't always perceive. And just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not happening. There are times when God works in the background, arranging the pieces, orchestrating events, and setting things up for what is to come. You may not feel it, but God is making a way for you. Maybe you're in a wilderness right now. Maybe you're facing a struggle that seems impossible to overcome. But let me tell you, God specializes in making a way in the wilderness. He takes the places that seem barren and dry and turns them into places of life and growth. The God who parted the Red Sea for the Israelites, the God who made a way for David to defeat Goliath, the God who sent His Son to die on a cross for our sins, this same God is working in your life today. He's making a way for you even when you don't see it. I know it's hard to trust in times of uncertainty. We want answers now. We want to know how everything will unfold. But I want to encourage you today. Trust God. Trust that He knows what you need. Trust that He is making a way. You may not see the way yet, but that doesn't mean it's not there. As Psalm 77:19 says, "Your way was through the sea, your path through the great waters. Yet your footprints were unseen." That God's path for your life may not always be visible to you, but that doesn't mean He's not walking it with you. So as we look at God's Word today, I want you to hold on to this truth. God is making a way for you right now, right where you are. He knows what you need. He knows what you need. He knows the best timing, and He is working behind the scenes. Trust in that. Trust in His power. Trust in His promises, and let Him guide you to the place He has prepared for you. You may be wondering, what does that mean for me? It means that even in your moment of uncertainty, God is at work. Even in the silence, God is working. And even though you might feel lost or unsure of the future, God has already paved the way. You don't have to see the whole path. You just need to take that first step, trusting that He is already ahead of you, making a way for you. And He's making it right now. As we continue to explore this powerful truth that God is making a way for you right now, I want to delve into the importance of trusting Him throughout the process. Because here's the reality that we all must face at one point or another. The journey of faith is often a journey of waiting. It's a journey where we have to trust God, even when we can't see the road ahead, and even when we're uncertain about how the story is going to unfold. And trust me, I know how difficult that can be. I've been there. We all have been there, haven't we? We know the feeling of being caught between the place where we are and the place where we long to be. The waiting is the hardest part. It's easy to trust God when everything is going smoothly, when the path ahead is clear, and when the blessings are flowing freely. But what about when things aren't going the way we expected? What about when the way ahead seems blocked and all we can do is look at the mountains in front of us and wonder, how is God going to make a way? I'll tell you, there are many times in life when the answers don't come as quickly as we want them to. There are moments when we have to trust God in the silence, in the waiting, and in the uncertainty. In fact, it's often in those moments that God is doing His most important work. I think of the Israelites when they found themselves at the Red Sea, with Pharaoh's army bearing down on them, the waters before them, and no clear way of escape. They had no idea how God was going to make a way. It didn't make sense. It seemed impossible. But that's exactly where God stepped in. He parted the Red Sea, and He led His people through on dry ground. The Israelites couldn't see it, but God was already making a way. And in the same way, God is making a way for you, even when you can't see it. You might be looking at the roadblocks in your life and thinking that there's no way out. There's no solution to this problem. But remember, the God who parted the Red Sea is still the God we serve today. He hasn't changed. And He's making a way in your life right now, even when you can't see it, even when you don't understand it, even when it doesn't make sense. Sometimes we look at our situations and ask, why, God? Why is this happening? Why is this happening? Why is it taking so long? And those are legitimate questions that many of us wrestle with. But let me remind you today, God is never late. He may not work on our timetable, but He is always right on time. Psalm 18:30 says, "As for God, His way is perfect. The word of the Lord is flawless. He is a shield for all who take refuge in Him." Was when God makes a way, it's always the perfect way, even if it's not the way we envisioned. And while it may feel like a delay in our lives, it is actually a divine appointment. God is orchestrating the details of our journey in ways that we can't even comprehend. Trusting God in the process means acknowledging that He is sovereign over all things, even the things we don't understand. And in our trusting, we align ourselves with His perfect will. I think of the Apostle Paul, who was no stranger to suffering and waiting. In 2 Corinthians 12, Paul tells us of his thorn in the flesh, a persistent struggle that he prayed earnestly to have removed. But God didn't remove it. Instead, he responded to Paul's prayer with these words, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. And Paul, in response, said, therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Paul had to trust God in the process. He had to trust that God knew what was best for him, even when the answer wasn't what he had hoped for. He had to trust that God's way, though different from his own, was better. And that's where we find ourselves today. We have to trust God, even when his plan doesn't match ours, and even when the process feels long and sometimes painful. But remember, it's during this process that God is making a way. He is shaping our character, strengthening our faith, and preparing us for what he has ahead. Maybe right now you're struggling to trust God in the process. Maybe you're feeling like you've waited long enough, or that God has forgotten you. But I want to remind you today that God is not only aware of your situation, he's actively at work in it. He's making a way for you, even if you can't see it yet. And as hard as it may be to hear this, sometimes God's greatest miracles come after we've been through the process of waiting, trusting, and growing in him. It's in those moments of waiting that we learn to lean into his grace, to surrender our plans, and to trust that his way is always better than our own. So today, I encourage you to trust the process. Trust that God knows what he's doing. Trust that his plan for your life is better than anything you could plan for yourself. Trust that even when you can't see it, he is making a way for you right now. And while the road may be difficult and the waiting may seem long, remember this: God is not distant. He is near. He is working on your behalf. He is making a way, and in his perfect timing, that way will be revealed to you. Keep trusting, keep waiting, and keep believing. God is making a way for you right now. As we continue to explore the truth that God is making a way for you right now, I want to take a moment to reflect on the importance of timing. It's often said that God is never early, never late, but always right on time. And while we might not always understand why things happen when they do, the truth is that God's timing is perfect, always. When we look back on our lives, we can often see how God's hand of provision, protection, and guidance was at work, even when we couldn't see it in the moment. His timing is never coincidental. It's always intentional. And this is something we must learn to trust. You see, timing is everything in God's plan. It's easy to believe that God will move when we want him to move, or that he will answer our prayers when we ask for them. But I've learned over the years that God's timeline doesn't always align with our own. And while that can be difficult, it's important for us to remember that his timing is grounded in his perfect wisdom and love. We might find ourselves wondering why he delays in answering our prayers, or why we are still waiting for that breakthrough we've been asking for. But here's the thing: God is never caught off guard. He knows exactly what you need and when you need it. I think of the story of Abraham and Sarah in the book of Genesis. God promised them a son, but they didn't receive the promise when they thought they would. They waited for years. In fact, Abraham was 100 years old, and Sarah was 90 when Isaac was finally born. Imagine the emotions they must have felt during that long wait: frustration, doubt, and perhaps even a sense of hopelessness. They had received a promise from God, but it seemed impossible, and it certainly didn't align with their own sense of timing. Yet, God's timing was perfect. Isaac was born at exactly the right moment, at a time when Abraham and Sarah could not take any credit for the miracle. The birth of Isaac was a testament to God's faithfulness, but it was also a reminder that God's timing is never late. It's always on time, even when it's beyond our understanding. Maybe right now you're in a season of waiting. You've been praying for something, perhaps for healing, for a new job, for financial provision, or for broken relationship to be restored. And it feels like the answer is nowhere in sight. You've asked God for a way, and yet the door remains closed. And while the waiting can be painful, I want to encourage you today with this. God is making a way for you, even if you can't see it yet. He is working behind the scenes, orchestrating the perfect moment for His plan to unfold in your life. It's in the waiting that we learn to trust His timing and to surrender our own timeline to Him. Think of the story of Joseph. His life was filled with unexpected twists and turns. Betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, wrongfully imprisoned, and then forgotten by those he helped. Yet, in the midst of all that, God was working. He was making a way. Joseph couldn't see it at the time, but every step of his journey was part of God's perfect timing. It was through his suffering that God positioned him to be second in command in Egypt, where he would eventually save his family from famine. And what did Joseph say when he finally reunited with his brothers? He said, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Genesis 50:20. Joseph had to wait. He had to trust God's timing, and when the moment came, it was a moment of divine fulfillment. And perhaps most importantly, I think of the ultimate example of God's perfect timing in the person of Jesus Christ. When God sent His Son to the earth, it was at precisely the right time. Galatians 4:4 tells us, "But when the set time had fully come, God sent His Son, born of a woman, born under the law." Jesus came at the appointed time when the world was ready for Him, when the stage was set for His mission of salvation to unfold. If God had sent Jesus even a day earlier or a day later, it would not have had the same impact. His birth, His ministry, His death, and His resurrection were all perfectly timed. And the same is true for your life today. God is making a way for you right now in His perfect timing. But I understand it's hard to wait. It's hard to trust when we can't see what's ahead. It's hard to believe that God is working when we feel stuck, when we feel like the door to our dreams is closed, when we feel like we're just spinning our wheels. But I want to remind you that even in the waiting, God is not idle. He is at work. He is preparing you for what's ahead, and He is orchestrating the details of your life in ways you can't yet comprehend. His timing is not our timing. His ways are not our ways. And even though we may not understand why things are happening when they are, we can be assured that God is always at work behind the scenes. Psalm 27:14 says, "Wait for the Lord, be strong, and take heart and wait for the Lord." Waiting requires strength. It requires us to take heart in the promises of God, knowing that He is faithful to fulfill them in His time. So while you wait, trust. Trust that He is making a way for you, even when it seems like there is no way. Trust that His timing is perfect and that He will never leave you or forsake you. Trust that He is working in your life in ways that you cannot see, and that when the time is right, He will open the doors that need to be opened, and He will close the doors that need to be closed. God is never late. He's always right on time. So trust Him in the waiting and believe that He is making a way for you right now. as we continue on this journey of understanding that God is making a way for you right now, I want to bring to light one of the most powerful truths we can cling to during times of difficulty and uncertainty. It's this: God's faithfulness is unwavering, even in the midst of life's challenges. We may face hardships, setbacks, and struggles, but in those moments, we are not alone. God is with us. He is working on our behalf, and He is making a way, even when it feels like the way is unclear. Life is full of unexpected twists and turns. There are seasons when everything seems to fall into place, and there are seasons when nothing seems to make sense. Some of you might be walking through a valley right now. Maybe it's a financial crisis, a health challenge, or the pain of losing someone dear to you. You might be facing a situation that seems insurmountable, and you're wondering if God sees you, if He's hearing your prayers, or if He's even aware of what you're going through. I want to assure you today that God is aware. He knows exactly where you are. And most importantly, He is still making a way for you. You see, God's faithfulness isn't conditional on our circumstances. It's not something that depends on whether we're having a good day or a bad day, whether things are going our way or falling apart. God's faithfulness is constant. The Bible tells us in 2 Timothy 2:13, if we are faithless, He remains faithful, for He cannot deny Himself. Even when we struggle with doubt, even when we feel like giving up, God remains faithful. His promises are sure, and He will not break them. He is making a way for you right now, even if you can't see it yet. Let me share with you a powerful example from the life of the Apostle Paul. Paul's life was anything but easy. He was shipwrecked, imprisoned, beaten, and faced constant persecution for preaching the gospel. But despite the many hardships he endured, Paul was unwavering in his confidence that God was with him and would use his circumstances for good. In Romans 8:28, Paul writes, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. This is a truth we must hold on to with both hands, especially in difficult times. Especially in difficult times. God is working all things together for our good, even when we can't see how. I know it's easy to feel overwhelmed when life throws challenges our way. It can feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders and it's hard to see beyond the storm. But remember this, God has a plan and He is orchestrating every detail of your life. The challenges you face right now may seem like obstacles, but in God's hands, they are opportunities. Opportunities for growth, opportunities to trust, opportunities to witness His faithfulness. As we walk through life, we must understand that sometimes the path God leads us down is not the one we would choose for ourselves. But it is always the path that will ultimately bring us closer to Him. Consider the story of the Israelites when they were trapped between the Red Sea and Pharaoh's army. They were in a dire situation. They had nowhere to go, no way out, and no way out, and no way to escape the danger that was closing in on them. But God was making a way. In the moment when all seemed lost, God parted the Red Sea and the Israelites walked through on dry ground. God's timing was perfect. His plan was bigger than their immediate circumstances. And even though they didn't understand the way forward, God knew exactly what needed to happen for their deliverance. When they were at their lowest point, God was at work, and that is the same for you today. When it feels like you're at your lowest, when the way forward seems impossible, know this: God is making a way for you. He's already at work, and just like He did for the Israelites, He will make a way for you, even when you can't see it yet. God's faithfulness is not just a nice idea to think about. It's something we can experience personally. The psalmist writes in Psalm 37:5, "You commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will act." When we place our trust in God, when we surrender our plans and desires to Him, He promises that He will act on our behalf. He will make a way. It may not look the way we imagined, but it will always be the way that leads us closer to Him and to the purpose He has for our lives. In your challenges, in your waiting, in your struggles, I encourage you to hold on to God's promises. Don't let go of His faithfulness. Keep trusting. Keep praying. Keep believing that He is making a way for you right now. Even when the circumstances seem impossible, know that God is not limited by our human understanding. He is working in ways we can't see, and He will bring about His perfect plan in His perfect timing. Remember, He is faithful, always, and He will never leave you or forsake you. As you walk through this season of your life, no matter what it looks like, keep your eyes on the truth. God is making a way for you. His faithfulness will carry you through. When the road is hard, He will strengthen you. When the path is unclear, He will guide you. When you feel like giving up, He will sustain you. God's faithfulness is the anchor you need to hold on to. And no matter how stormy the sea, you can trust that He is with you. He is for you, and He is making a way for you. So don't give up. Don't lose heart. Keep trusting. Keep believing. Keep moving forward, because God is making a way for you right now, and His faithfulness will never fail. As we come to the end of our time together today, I want to leave you with one final thought, a truth that can transform your perspective and renew your strength. God is making a way for you right now, even when you don't see it, even when it doesn't feel like it. He is working behind the scenes in ways that you cannot even begin to imagine. And just as He has made a way for others throughout history, He is making a way for you too. His plan for your life is unfolding in ways that are far greater than your understanding. You may be asking, how do I know God is making a way for me? How do I trust Him when everything seems so uncertain? Well, let me remind you of something that has brought me peace and comfort time and again. God is never late. His timing is perfect. He is not bound by the limitations of time and space that we are. He sees the beginning from the end. He knows the outcome of every situation before we even step into it. And because of this, He is able to make a way for us in ways we couldn't possibly conceive. When the door is shut, He knows the right time to open it. When the path seems blocked, He has a way around it. When we feel trapped and cornered, God will make a way. There is no obstacle too great, no mountain too high, no valley too deep that God cannot and will not navigate for you. But let me also remind you that while God is making a way, He often asks us to walk by faith and not by sight. In the midst of our uncertainty, He calls us to trust. He calls us to trust. He calls us to surrender our plans and our timelines and to trust that He is in control. There may be times when it feels like we're walking in the dark, taking steps without knowing exactly where the next step will lead. But this is where our faith grows. When we step forward in trust, even though we don't have all the answers, knowing that God is faithful to lead us, guide us, and open doors we could never open on our own. The Israelites had to walk through the Red Sea by faith. They had to trust that the waters would part, even though it seemed impossible. They had to keep moving forward, even when it felt like they were walking straight into the danger. But when they took that step of faith, God parted the waters. When they trusted Him, He made a way. And in the same way, God is asking you to trust Him today. You may not see the solution right now, but that doesn't mean He isn't working. God is working all things together for your good. He is making a way for you. As we finish today, I want to challenge you. Will you trust God's faithfulness? Will you believe that He is making a way for you, even when the way seems unclear? Will you surrender your plans, your desires, and your fears to Him, trusting that His way is always the best way? Trusting that His way is always the best way. I know it's not always easy. There are times when doubt creeps in and fear rises up, but that is when our faith must rise higher. That is when we must remember who our God is. The God who has parted seas, who has brought down giants, who has prodded seas, who has brought down giants, who has provided for His people time and time again. He is the same God who is with you right now, and He is making a way for you. I believe that God wants to do something incredible in your life. I believe that the road ahead, though it may be filled with challenges, is a road of victory because God is paving it for you. He is going before you, preparing the way, and all you need to do is walk in faith. And as you do, I promise you will see His provision. You will see His faithfulness. You will see His faithfulness. You will see the doors He opens, the ways He makes, the paths He clears, and the blessings He pours out in your life. But it all begins with trust. It begins with the decision to let go of your control, to surrender your will, and to place your future in the hands of the one who knows you better than you know yourself. God is making a way for you right now. He is at work in your life, and He will continue to work until He has brought you into the full destiny He has planned for you. So today, I want to challenge you to step forward in faith. Will you trust that God is making a way for you? Will you choose to believe that He is working in your life, even when you can't see the outcome yet? I encourage you to take that step of faith, to trust Him with your future, and to watch as He unfolds His plan for you. God is faithful. He is making a way, and He will never leave you nor forsake you. As we close today, I invite you to make a commitment to trust God's promises for your life. Maybe you've been facing a situation where it feels like all doors are closed, and the way forward is unclear. But right now, I encourage you to lift your eyes. Place your trust in the one who makes a way where there is no way, and to believe that He is working all things together for your good. Would you take a moment to pray with me? Ask God to give you the strength to trust Him fully, to walk by faith, and to believe that He is making a way for you. And as you do, remember, God has not forgotten you. He is with you. He is for you, and He is making a way. If today's message resonated with you, if you feel like you're standing at the edge of your own Red Sea, wondering how you will ever move forward, know this: God is making a way. Keep trusting. Keep believing. And remember that you are not alone. God is with you, and He is faithful. May you experience His presence and His provision in a mighty way today and always. Amen.